What's up, humans, and welcome to our new Psicoactivo. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Okay, I thought initially that today's Weaponized episode could maybe have one of these already recorded interviews, but it didn't. It was very interesting, though. They spoke with a lawyer. I think he's a MUFON member who has been investigating UFOs for decades. And they spoke to him about the whole legislative process. And right now, what I feel is that the people that Jeremy Corbell is trying to bring, I think those are potential witnesses who may have hands-on experience with these things, whether it's the craft or the biologics. At least that's the feeling that he's communicating, I think. And they are the ones that are most hesitant to come forward because of everything that's going on. I don't know if you have checked, but over the last week, it's been a pretty massive shit show in all respects, except for the tridactyls, which is kind of funny. And before I say what I'm going to say, I'm just want to reiterate that I'm investigating the case with people who try to be more proactive in the case. I've already had some skeptics in the show, which is Alaina Hardy and Alan Izarraras. And we had a really cool conversation, and none of them think these are alien. And they gave wonderful explanations from their point of view and from their expertise. And I think that should be taken into account. We also have the case of Professor Stephen Brown, who has become a friend of mine, and he's also a skeptic of the mummies. He leaves open possibilities for everything. He's changed his mind along the process, which is something that I will always applaud about anybody, which is what gets us to what I was going to say. If you guys don't remember, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp did an episode that was produced by TMC where they talk about the mummies, but it was strange to me that they only focused on the ones in Mexico, and they didn't say nice things about the case in general. And today they changed their stance publicly, which I really, really appreciate. They did not say that they were aliens or anything. They just said that thanks to Jesse Michels' episode, which was very thorough and very important, in my opinion. I'm not biased, by the way. I think that changed the conversation a little bit.
One thing I wanted to mention, I haven't watched it yet, but I heard our friend Ernie Klein texted us, and he just said, "I hate being right all the time," and it was about the mummies, which we were very dismissive of because we saw the little ones in Congress. But apparently, Jesse Michels made a really cool video where he deep dived into some of these mummies. So I'm going to keep an open mind because Ernie Klein is teasing the shit out of me, and I'm going to check out what it is that Jesse came up with. But I heard it's really good. I just haven't watched it yet, so I'm going to watch it actually right after this, and I hear it's good.
What I saw online is that Jesse is now quarantined because he came into contact with these mummies. So I want to watch it too. If Ernie is vouching for it, I'll take a look.
And that's something I really, really like, because the idea is not to just claim that these are aliens or from another planet, or although there's a lot of data that points towards different places, but we can't just make definitive statements when we don't know what these things are. And I'm talking only about the bigger ones, the M types. Thank you to Professor Stephen Brown for bringing up that term, by the way. That's from him. So another thing that changed from the conversation was now we have Vinny Adams from Disclosure Team, who you guys know, he's a friend of the show. He's going to do an interview to Dr. Garry Nolan on his show later this week. And they're going to talk specifically about the tridactyls. And I do appreciate that Dr. Nolan is coming forward to speak about that and see what he has to say, because I do value his scientific opinion quite a bit. He's one of the most important voices in this space, in my opinion, scientific voices. So in that vein, we had some Dr. Garry Nolan today. I was surprised. It was on the Chris Lehto show, on the Lehto Files, who does amazing interviews. I've covered a few of his previous interviews, the one with Ross Coulthart I covered, and some more. And he just had a conversation with Dr. Garry Nolan, Diana Pasulka, and they spoke about the first clip that I'm going to show you guys is about, Dr. Garry Nolan is asked about the most compelling evidence he's seen. To a lot of people's surprise, he mentioned that the data he's looking at Skywatcher is the data that has so far compelled him the most, which I found really interesting. And I want to share with you guys what he said.
And we've had a few questions, Gary. Wim asked, what is the best data that you've come across? What is the best evidence for NHI that you've come across?
So, well, the certainty claim has been misunderstood, but it didn't stop it from going worldwide. Stanford scientists is 100% sure of this X, Y, or Z, which I hadn't actually said that. If you look back at what I said, it was basically, what do you think the chance that it is here? I said, if I were to make a bet, it would be 100%.
Yeah.
It's kind of, at the end of the day, when you're placing a bet on the table on roulette, you're going to place it somewhere and you're 100% certain it's going to be that when you do it.
Yeah.
Or you go home having lost all your money. There's a beautiful hummingbird right outside the window looking at me. So the best evidence. I would say there's a lot of the best evidence, but stuff that I've been involved with Skywatcher, where we make this supposed call and then things show up within a time frame posted, and then I've got pictures of things like right next to the helicopter that showed up, or just a coincidence of this on one of our separate events when objects were seen, and we have pictures of the stuff flying by rapidly. Because it's moving so gosh darn fast that all you see is it across perhaps 2 or 3 frames of a rapid camera moving. And it's not a bug, so I don't care what anybody says. So it's those kinds of things that convince me further that at least not being the government, we can collect that data. But otherwise, the best fallback I have is that the 10,000 or so or 100,000 anecdotes put together, I'm actually trying to work with some statisticians to say, how do I use this to make a scientific claim of some veracity? And what's the percentage chance I can assign to that, short of 100%? Beyond a certain point, you make a decision about your life. I'm pretty sure that this is how I should go. And evolution does that every day. And the winners are who we see around us today in the natural world. And so the same thing has to be with this. Perhaps the nature, and this is more to Diana's point or Diana's realm, perhaps the nature of the phenomenon is faith. That, at a certain point, how much do you need to be shown before you can believe what you see?
This is a very important point that I think we should explore more on. But what he talked about here coincidentally came like 2 days after there was an announcement from Skywatcher. James Fowler said that he's no longer working with Skywatcher. He's going to be working, hold on, let me read the statement to you. It says, and I quote, steering toward new horizons. From August 2024 to July 2025, I had the opportunity to serve as a founder and consultant at Skywatcher, where I led field operations supporting the mission of exploring unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and advancing air domain awareness. I am stepping away from active involvement with Skywatcher, with my contributions now limited to foundational work. I am excited to focus on a new venture in aerial intelligence, dedicated to building innovative technology to address complex challenges in this field. I remain proud of my foundational contributions at Skywatcher and wish the team continued success in their future endeavors, end quote. He tagged Dr. Nolan, Jake Barber, and Skywatcher. And Dr. Nolan wished him luck. But this is an important development, especially because if you guys remember, Fowler spoke to Jesse Michels a few months ago. And when he was talking about the data that he had collected and the techniques that he was using, Jesse asked him something along the lines of he would potentially share that data. And it seemed like he was kind of waiting for the government to tell him not to do that and work out something. I don't know if some of the techniques that he figured out might be proprietary to someone, or I don't know, or patented or something like that. But this move certainly seems like he took that road, maybe. I don't know. I'm just speculating a little bit here, but it does seem a little bit strange. Okay, so the other part that I wanted to talk to you guys about was something that is very dear to my heart, because this channel is called Psicoactivo Podcast. And I did start speaking about psychedelic substances in my first 10 episodes with my buddies from Tijuana, because I've never hidden this from anybody. And whoever judges me, they're well within their right. I understand. I think I was irresponsible when I was younger with a little bit of that. As a result of that, I did have an NDE, which was very unfortunate. But I did learn a lot when I was, because I took it both as leisure and also a learning curve. I read a bunch of books, and I did many unsafe experiments with these psychedelic substances. And I do regret risking my life and hurting my family and my loved ones. That is something that I will always feel like I do regret. But the learning curve that I had with psychedelics made me understand that psychedelics are just a different way that is faster, yeah, to reach certain states of consciousness. But also, there are many more ways that are where you don't need psychedelics to reach a different state of consciousness. And this is where the conversation for me got the most interesting, because Dr. Garry Nolan and Dr. Diana Pasulka riff off something that Chris Lehto posted from Bernardo Kastrup, who is an author who does talk about psychedelic substances quite a bit, and something that is very interesting and important to share with people about psychedelics and about these quote unquote downloads that scientists talk about, and that many different names in science and inventors, engineers, artists have had throughout the years. In many cases, they didn't use any type of substance, but in many more cases, they did. So there's like a gray area there, which is where I think that, yeah, it's a faster way. It is. And it has been stigmatized, at least since the 60s. But many different cultures throughout history have psychedelic substances, or medicine, as they call them, to use for the improvement of either life, both physically and spiritually, because that's how they saw it back then, as something spiritual, not to confuse with something religious. Those are different. And I like that these conversations are happening. So I'm going to play you a little slightly longer clip where Chris Lehto talks about the effects of psychedelics, how they are limiting, but they do access different states of consciousness depending on what you consume. And then Dr. Pasulka does talk about the traditions and how in many cases it's not needed to use any type of psychedelic or shortcut, because we could call it that. It's a shortcut. And then Dr. Garry Nolan talks about these downloads that he has, because he is a really successful scientist. He has many patents. He has done a lot of cancer research work that a lot of people thank him for and should be grateful to him for. And that was really interesting to watch. So I'm going to play it for you guys. Let me know what you think. Here it is.
Don't realize who's behind them, which is all your subconscious processes.
I thought Bernardo Kastrup, I don't know if you've heard of him or follow him, is a researcher. I thought it was very interesting when he talked about consciousness. He looks into this as well, that these psychoactive compounds, drugs, actually limit your brain activity, to where it, rather than increase brain activity, like we thought in the past, this is your brain on drugs, and the egg is frying. It was actually the reverse, where the drugs were limiting activity. So have you seen, Diana, in all your religious studies, is that a common use? Do most religions use some sort of psychoactive drug?
I wouldn't say so. I would say that, some do, but you could achieve these brain states naturally, but you have to have a certain lifestyle in order to do that, which a lot of people don't want. So
let's talk about that lifestyle for a little bit. Not that I take it, I really don't. It's really difficult to lead a lifestyle like that. You would have to try not to do certain things. Like it goes from behavioral modification to certain things that you eat, that you either drink, smoke, the level of stress, the exercise you do, how much you read, how much information you get into your brain. It's a whole combination of things, and it's not easy. There's a lot of people that do a lot of those things, but you have to do like quite a bit and like in a really balanced fashion. And there's not a lot of people that do that in the world. It's really difficult because we're humans. We give in to certain pleasures, certain dopamine hits, all this stuff. And yeah, but it is possible, of course. And the people that meditate, go to the gym, lead a healthy lifestyle, spend time with animals, read a lot, learn from science, learn from spirituality too, learn that there's a combination between the two, that one doesn't necessarily harm the other. It's a lot of that, you know? And I think that it's really cool that Dr. Pasulka and Dr. Nolan are talking about this, but that's what she means when she says it's a lifestyle. It is.
You know, drugs are like the fat.
And I don't have that lifestyle, just to be clear. I'm just saying that I know about it because that's some of the stuff that I've learned over experience and years and reading and talking to people. I love talking to everybody, almost.
Fast way to do that, but you know, people that are geniuses in the past, like Ramanujan, the mathematician, a self-taught mathematical genius who, you know, grew up in a early 20th century or even before that, grows up in, you know, this little town in India, and then goes to Cambridge, you know, becomes like this person who understands math at a level that we still can't understand. There's a journal dedicated to his mathematical equations. He believed that Lakshmi, a goddess, the local goddess, would whisper these equations in his ear, and he didn't take credit for any of it, which I think is interesting, because I started to do this type of study into creativity because of Tyler. I thought, how does he get these ideas? You know, he says they just pop into his head, and actually the philosopher Plato talks about that also, that, you know, once you believe that you don't know anything, or once you get to that understanding that you know nothing, that's when knowledge starts. And so that's why Plato was thought to be the smartest man in the world at the time, was because Socrates, he thought he didn't know anything. Looking at geniuses in history shows us that when they get into these states, which often are states associated with religious protocols, what happens is that they identify an external agent as being responsible for their genius idea. They don't take credit for it, but it came through them. Okay, so that part of the brain. So people today who study creativity identify that part of the brain, the frontal cortex, is shut down, it's quiet, and that's the brain that Garry said, you know, we think we are. But when that's quiet, that's when the genius happens. That's when these creative ideas happen. And because we feel like it didn't originate with us, we generally identify, okay, it had to be an alien, or it had to be a goddess, or it had to be God, or it had to be an angel, or, you know, something like that. So we have all these names for this process, which actually could just be the creative process of human beings.
Right. It could come. When I used to go around to, you know, schools and giving talks, and I'd be, you know, asked to go sit and have lunch with graduate students and postdocs, often the question comes up is, you know, how are you so creative? And I said, well, I sort of imagine I have a bunch of little elves running around in my subconscious that are doing all the work for me. You know, to basically Diana's point. But it is always in that moment of quiet and I think she just hit on something that I hadn't thought of when I'm in that quiet moment where I turn off my ego. And that ego is who you are, who you think you are. Suddenly answers come. You know, if you say, as Diana just did, that I don't know nothing, so tell me, suddenly answers come. And I had those kinds of downloads that just come out of nowhere. Yeah, I'd love to say, it was the angels. And, Father Delaney from my Catholic school way back would love me to say that, or Sister Mary Carmeline, she was my math teacher. I remember them all. They'd love it if I said it was God. I don't, but these weird ideas come from somewhere. Often I can't trace the 1+1+1 path to how even my subconscious could have gotten to the idea.
And like the common saying, sleep on it. A lot of times I'll wake up and I'll have so much clarity on a subject. It's like you're working while you're asleep or something.
Okay, so that was a long one. I'm sorry. I thought that was a very interesting thought from Chris, talking about the dream state and when you rest. I think that is a very important part of the biological processes that happen in our bodies. We need to sleep to get back that energy and creativity and all that. When you're well rested right after, you have a lot of clarity usually. I love that. That happens to me on Sundays usually. But yeah, it was something that I do want to talk about a little bit before we go. I'm sorry for the long episode, but this is one of the topics that I feel the most passionate about, because I think that Dr. Garry Nolan is somebody that needs to talk about this part of the whole process. This is the thing that he's doing that I think is some of the most important work, because of what he discovered inside of the brain, the codeputamen, all of those different witnesses that receive studies in their brain. There's a lot there that I still think is not public for a reason. I think eventually when the data arrives a certain place where they can share, it'd be really cool to see a white paper about these discoveries, because I think that the potential of them, that part of the brain, does seem like it's something important related to psi phenomena or ESP. And it's something biological, tangible. And I think that's very important. And that is correlated to all of this, these alleged downloads and everything that's happening with Kai Dickens and the telepathy tapes. By the way, the report that I made a few months ago, 2 months ago, about Dr. Julian Mossbridge being involved in the telepathy tapes trials, scientific, rigorous trials. They just released a new video about that. And I was really happy that it was confirmed that Dr. Mossbridge is the one who is running that experiment, as Kai Dickens told me 2 months ago. So thank you, Kai. Thank you, Dr. Mossbridge. I am trying to get Dr. Mossbridge. I think I'm close. I will make an announcement soon, I think. But her and I have been talking, and I'm going to ask her about this. And I think this is all tied together. We're living in a really interesting time when we're learning more things about our own physiology, our brain, remembering things about our past too, because older cultures already have a lot of knowledge written about this, although it's interpreted mostly in a religious connotation, but it's still there, and we have to interpret it to these times. I think a lot of that, there's a lot there that it's no use because it's just anecdotes and tales and myth, but there's a lot there that does have some historical importance, in my opinion, and we should learn how to divide it and separate it from the rest. But let me know what you think about this, about Dr. Garry Nolan's statements of Skywatcher, the data that he saw. He saw one of them next to the helicopter, he said. That jumped out at me. They had a wonderful talk about AI, where it kind of concerned me a little bit that so many scientists now are using AI for everything. Maybe it's my Doomer Friday kind of comment of the day, but it does concern me a little bit. Maybe I would talk to somebody who's more of a specialist than I am to make me understand more of why they're doing this. They seem to be very on board, and that's a little concerning. And let me know what you think about this whole talk about psychedelics, states of consciousness, both artificially and naturally, how they can reach them, and these downloads. There's a lot of debate about downloads. There's a lot of people that think this is just like a cultist kind of thing. I don't see it that way, honestly, but maybe it's because I have a different background. I'm Mexican. We grew up with a lot of different things, and not that I believe in them, but I see them more normally because I grew up around them. It's just like, even if I don't believe them, doesn't matter. You gotta like try to understand it at least. It's part of the culture. But let me know what you think. Whatever you say, just please be respectful. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us. And it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Dr. Garry Nolan and Dr. Diana Pasulka and Chris Lehto too. Always. Bye. Remember.
Psicoactivo.
Always.